All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Sip of Knowledge with Marty Duffy, Liz Rhoades, and Lou Bryson. Plus, this week, two special guests from around the world. We have Henric Molin and Henry Preiss, who I will let your host give a more formal introduction to in just a moment. Real quick, before we get started, I'm Will Hookinga from Zavvi.co. As always, just want to point out a few different ways you can interact with your hosts and their guests throughout the show today. So on your right, you'll see a chat box. Feel free to say hello. Let us know where you're joining us from around the world. I know we've got people from all over out there. If you have a question at any point related to the show, there's a little button at the bottom that says Ask a Question. Just click that button, send your question in. We'll be keeping an eye out for those throughout the show today. And last but not least, feel free to invite your friends to join us. There's a share button at the top that makes it really easy to do that. But with all that said, Marty, Liz, Lou, I will turn the floor over to you now.
Thanks there, Will. And remember, for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. And that's the Taco Bell. Chimichanga. Delicious. Every Saturday night, baby. Hi, everyone. I'm Martin Duffy. I am a former senior master of whiskey for 14 years. 14 years, 2 of which were spent in Ireland as basically a demigod. 18 months as the national brand ambassador for Benedictine, and 8 glorious years as co-producer of the Chicago Independent Spirit Expo, and for the last nearly 7 years, next month, the sole representative for the Glencairn in all of North America. So if you see me on a dog-driven sled in the Great White North, that's me. Well, that's me driving it. Anyways. Yeah. Hi, Liz.
Thanks, Marty. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Liz Rhoades, technical distiller and spirit consultant. Have just over a decade of experience in the alcoholic beverage industry, worked on a variety of substrates and spirits and product types, including beer, rum, vodka. But my particular favorite and expertise, of course, is in whiskey. I spent most of my career at a tiny little corporation known as Diageo, but am now currently founder and principal at Spirit Safe Consulting. Hey, scroll down to the About the Host section. There's actually a link to my website, so click it. Check it out. Lou?
Show them the logo, Liz.
Yes, and today, very special. We have Henry and Henric. Really exciting. Every time I've had a meeting with Henric or seen him, he's always dressed up. So for today, I'm wearing a proper button-up shirt, a little neckerchief, and my logo pin.
Nice. So much better than that tube top you're always wearing. So much better than that tube top you're always wearing. So it's nice, a little classier.
It's proper today.
I hardly recognize you with your clothes on.
Whoa! The Swedes, man, they go right for it.
No, sorry.
That's all right. It's Sweden. Lou.
Yes, I'm here. Don't worry. Let's just take things a little bit slower here. I am Lou Bryson. I'm a whiskey writer. I apologize for the light today. It's just really bright outside.
No, it suits you. It suits you.
Yeah, it suits me. How nice. I was the managing editor at Whiskey Advocate for 20 years and have since gone out on my own again as a freelancer. I am the senior drinks writer for the Daily Beast website and pushing my 2 books, Tasting Whiskey, Whiskey Masterclass, broadly acknowledged as wonderful tomes of whiskey excellence.
I know a few broads who love it.
But do they acknowledge it?
They acknowledge it.
And today I am, like all of us, drinking Spirits of Hven.
Spirits of Hven.
Back to you, Marty.
Oh, I'm stealing that name, Henric. Spirits of Hven. I don't give you Spirits of Hven. Right here. Hi, everyone. A lot of times people come up to me and go, Marty, you're a good-looking guy. What do you know about a Swedish whiskey? I go, well, I don't. But I know a couple of guys who do. and we're having him on the show today. And this is kind of a first. It's the first time we've had two guys who basically have the same first name. We look for any kind of little benchmark you find.
And that's the tie-in. That's the only thing.
That's the tie-in.
There
Now
might be games as well.
we have first off, we have Mr. Henry Preiss, Preiss Imports. And if you haven't been to a spirit show and seen Henry with his vast array of a menagerie, I will say, of various spirits that are eclectic, but always delicious and always fun. And then Henric Molin, also known as Henric Mobile to a lot of people. I guess that's his punk rock name. But
It's my extra home.
Yeah.
Not only is he the owner and purveyor of spirits of Hven, looks like Hven, but no, it's Hven. But he's also, I think, the Lord of the Isle there, of Hven Isle. Plus, Henric, Mickey Mouse
a little bit corny too.
Mickey Mouse called. I think he wants his gloves back. Look at those.
Too many fingers.
It's the proper grain handling.
Poor Mickey. He had them before World War II, and he lost a few in the war.
Sorry, Liz, I don't know why.
We lost a couple of kids there yesterday. I don't know if that's the wolves or
a couple of kids.
Children of the
Children of the Corn.
Children of the Corn. They'll come back to haunt you. Believe me. If you read the book. All right. Geez, Liz. Children of the Corn. I think they've done 16 remakes of that movie. Henry, we'll start with you, my friend. Let's go through your resume. I mean, how'd you get into the spirit business? You're a long time man in the business.
Yeah, it's an extensive resume.
It goes way back, I believe, 1930s, maybe even
a little bit earlier.
Prohibition.
In all seriousness, I got into this industry sort of sideways. It wasn't something that I said I'm going to be doing. I was actually doing construction in my earlier years. I loved it.
Wow.
But in construction, you're working, then you're out of work, you're working, you're out of work. And I go, that might not be the best field long-term for me. And my father was in the business. We immigrated from Germany to the USA in 1961. My father is really, honestly, one of the early pioneers of imported spirit specialties in the USA. Early days, the very first cachaça importer with Epioca, Western US importer for Jägermeister, lots of brands, in those early days. So it's now, early 70s, and I'm moving out of thinking construction isn't going to be for me, and I don't know what I'm going to do, and I just went to help my father. I go, well, I'll do some delivery for him. I had long hair. I had a van. I convinced Jägermeister to pay for painting the van. And I had the Jaeger van, the first official Jaeger van in America. And I drove it for about 130,000 miles, delivering Jägermeister and other spirits, which were pretty hard to sell in the early 70s. Most of my friends accused me of wanting to sell them cough syrup. But as we all know, it went on to great heights. So I would, wear my delivery clothes. I carried a suit in the car because, like Henric, who always wears a suit, back in the 70s, when you entered a store to sell them something, you wore a shirt and tie and usually a jacket. And I started, as I started delivering for my father, I would say to people, hey, my father carries some of these kind of products. He's never shown them. So there I slipped into sales. My sales hat went on. I go, well, this is too good to pass up. And the rest is history. 47 years in the liquor business, ups and downs. This is my fourth company. I had one I went broke in. You think you know everything when you're young, and it turns out you don't. And then I started another company in 1987, the first Preiss Imports, which in 2008, Tony Foglio, Keith Greggor, former partners in Sky Vodka, they had stepped out after selling to Campari. They really liked what we were doing, and they bought a piece of the company and eventually bought the rest of it. And so then I thought I would be with what is Hodling today into my late years in this business. But typically when people buy companies, they don't want any of the original people there. So I was gracefully moved out, and one of my 3 kids wanted to be back into business, didn't want to let the family legacy go away. And so in 2008, we started what we couldn't use Preiss Imports, had to call it HPS Epicurean. Didn't stand for Henry Preiss Selection, even though it could be worked that way. It stood for Heart, Passion, and Soul, which is really the basis of who we are, what we do. You know, we have a lot of products, and I like to view us as a very old school merchant, something what in the UK would have been Justerini and Brooks, Berry Brothers, places where you would go because you trust what they handle to be really good products. And so over the last, at this point, we're in our 9th year. We've put together what I think is one of the best portfolios in the industry. And along with that, we have Spirits of Hven. We met Henric and Anya through ADI, through Drew Faulkner, who said, Henric, you have to meet Henry. Henry, you have to meet Henric. And we missed each other at ADI. So Henric, a few weeks later, made that long trip over the ocean again. And at the Wine and Spirit Wholesalers Show, we connected. And I think we share the same love and passion. And it moved on to, representing all the products that Henry makes and adding new ones as time goes on. And it's been really a great journey. So
you've been in it since a kid, and now, your daughter, Nikki,
my daughter, Nikki, my partner. So she'll own the company. There has to be a continuity. I'll do this a long time.
Do you want to adopt his son, Henry?
Pardon me?
Adopt a son?
So it's
always plenty of advice on.
It's a long time journey. Everything. It takes a long time to build brands nobody's heard of, and we get suppliers that are frustrated, but I always point to Luxardo, which before Luxardo kicked in for us at the old company, we spent 15 years hand selling bottle by bottle of Luxardo Maraschino, and then their Amaretto and their Morlaco, their cherry liqueur. And, and people were so about it. And then the cocktail revolution kicked in. But if we hadn't spent those 15 years hand selling product by, a bottle at a time, they would not be where they are today. It's just that simple. And we really can point to a lot of products that way. And so it's those suppliers that have the patience that stick with us. We care about all the products we sell. We're not an 80-20 company. We look at every brand as totally equal as part of our family of products that, we want people to look at and say, well, this fits, that fits, an overlay approach, so that no matter anybody representing us can take part of our portfolio and say, it does fit in here for us, distributor level, retail level, on premise. So I don't want to hog the whole show. Henric's out there standing in the cornfield.
I'm worried about him getting sunstroke in that suit.
You mentioned Drew. I know Drew signed on. So, hey, Drew, thanks for joining us.
Drew and Eric Owens from ADI, Jorge Santa Cruz, Steampunk Henric. I like that. Yeah. Aaron Owens. Stephen Randall's all the way from Ireland. Brad Krause, our man in Panama. I think Christina's from.
A quick personal note to Drew. I'm deliberately not eating tri-tip in front of you, buddy.
Yeah. Andrew, by the way, is sitting on the dock of the bay in San Francisco right now. That's what he's saying. Yeah, about that.
Nice.
Okay, so let's get to Henric. Poor guy. I mean, look at him. First off, I think he was much bigger in that suit about 15 minutes ago. I think it's that. And then, he could be attacked by Jeeper Creepers any minute out of that cornfield.
This is just like slow distilling, right?
Now, Henric, that is your cornfield right there?
It is. Isn't it wonderful?
Wow.
Wow. Look at that.
What's the?
That's going to be Mercurius corn whiskey in just a couple of years. Isn't it wonderful?
Yes.
So, Henric, why don't you give us a lowdown on your path to all of this, to this empire?
Oh, empire. Oh, it's very, very small.
All empires have to start somewhere.
Yeah. I'm a chemist by education, flavorist by heart. I tend to say I love to experiment. I like to actually bring stuff from the field to the table, to the ball, all the way through. But look at this side here. All the wheat. That's wheat we're going to make vodka from, and also our base.
And this is all yours.
Amazing, isn't it? It's all, or actually, it's members of the island and some of our employees. But it's all contract grown for us. So you can actually see far up there, you have all our barley, and that's the rye on the top floor over there.
Look at that.
So that's, the rice just about to be harvested, actually.
Harvested. Yeah.
So, and here you can see the silos where it comes in afterwards. With the wheat whiskey, the corn whiskey, and the rye whiskey, we don't malt. So we just bring it straight in, which you will see eventually here. Anyway, I said we have 4 different small distilleries now. You will see some of those really long stuff as well. But also very nice stuff here. See, that's our small shop here. You have Imba over there.
Hi there.
Hey.
You can buy all this stuff if you want. And we did have a talk about selecting your favorite child, right? Now, my dear son is actually working the bar here somewhere, but I'm told that actually we have 1,500 different whiskeys here. So a lot of different whiskeys. But if you're gonna select one kid, Lou, select your own.
There you go.
We got to see the still. Might jug a little.
How large, Henric, is your complex there? How big is it? It looks pretty big.
We can take about 500 people in the restaurants. We can in the hotel we can take about 150 people. So, and production-wise, we do about 2,000 bottles per hour.
Dude, you say that's not an empire?
Yeah, right.
This is our small whiskey distillery. Here we do 1 barrel of malt whiskey per shift, so per 6 hours about. We have a small test still here, which some of you might recognize for other projects.
Very cute.
And who does all your distilling, Henric? Is it you? Is it you have a staff?
No, I wish. I love distilling, but unfortunately, time doesn't permit. I do some trials, but we have a very good team here doing brewing, distilling, and they're all masters of their own trade. So here's one of our small test stills as well. Our small, we have vacuum stills, we have pressurized stills.
Wow, look at all this.
Freeze dry your stuff. It's amazing. To preserve all this stuff. Vacuum distilling, you have the traditional copper stills, those with a lot of column stuff to make neat spirits that makes you drunk quicker. Where we also make our gins, our vodka, and of course we have this amazing still.
Yeah.
You see this. This is the best still in the world. Here's actually where we do our our Mercurius, and the Venus whiskey. So it's a continuous wooden coffee still.
Coffee, yeah.
Amazing. It's the original coffee still. And it's very, very efficient as well. We do about 5 barrels of whiskey per hour. So,
Wow.
So again,
Henrik,
It looks like beehive.
how many stills do you have? And yeah, the original, what Henrik was saying, the original coffee stills were square, and that's why it looks
Looks like beehive, though.
a beehive.
Looks like, a beekeeper.
It does kind of look like a beehive.
How many different stills do you have? And
I think
what's
we
the count?
have 18 stills now. From 100 liters and up, we have 18 stills.
18 stills? Glenfiddich
Yeah.
has 18 stills. Actually, maybe they have 27.
Ours are
Empire,
50 to 100
Empire.
liters. So we have this one. That's our biggest still. That's 3,000 liters. Otherwise, they're smaller. But my wife tends to say some people select or collect cars or breadcrumbs or whatever. I collect stills. But it is.
Marty, that also kind of looks like a card catalog. Or
It
like a
does.
filing cabinet,
Well, you're a
right?
former librarian.
Yeah, it comes to me.
But
Do we decimal?
I know one thing though. I know why they stopped making these stills out of wood.
Yes.
But it does make a fabulous spirit. So I'm very happy for it.
What
And it does.
what are you distilling in the coffee still?
So what we're doing there, actually go up.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can I ask a really quick, small question? Is it okay to start drinking? Can we have some of the whiskey?
Geez.
Is that
Drink,
okay?
of course. Of course,
Yes!
just drink.
Okay, go ahead. Drive on.
It's only 1:30 in Lou's neck of the woods, so been holding back for quite some time.
So what we do in our wooden washer, because I don't want to bring in the dirt, all grains in, wash in that. So what we actually do is we do a first distillation in a pot still, and we do the low wines in the coffee still.
Okay.
So that way, but we're actually just now designing mash still, where we could actually do all grains in distilling and separating the alcohol from the grains.
Okay.
See, walking around that big distillery with steampunk clothes, it gets a little hot even in Sweden, doesn't it?
It was easy to sit here, right? AC going on. So that's more or less what we do. We also have a laboratory, as some of you know, where we do analysis for a lot of companies around the world. Everything from the mom and dad company that Liz mentioned to the smaller ones. Which
So that would be everyone else.
more or less. We have right now about 1,400 distillers on our list of clients.
How many people work at that distillery? I mean, with all that stuff, and I mean, I'm assuming you own that hotel and the restaurant.
Yeah.
Before enormous staff.
We were 50. Now we're down to 32, I think. So we cut back a bit, but
wow.
We're seeing the light in the tunnel now.
How do people get over there? Do they have to fly? Are there boats? Teleportation?
You get drunk enough, you swim over.
I'm going over to heaven,
Yeah.
Swim.
There are boats going from Copenhagen and from Landskrona, which is the closest city on the mainland there, and Helsingborg and Helsingør, where Hamlet had his castle. So there's a lot of boats coming on. So during summer now, we have about 300,000 tourists visiting the island. So quite a lot.
Did you say where Hamlet had his castle? Hamlet was a real guy? I thought he was total fiction. Anyone know?
I think you're breaking up, or my connection is bad.
What? Anyone hear me? Oh, well.
Yeah.
Anyways,
No.
That's a
Here's
Lou
a question.
question, I feel like.
what's the matter, Lizard? What?
Hamlet, I feel like that's a Lou question.
A Lou question whether there was a real Hamlet? Yeah, you're a literary guy, Lou. And Lou, you're muted, Lou.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Of course it was.
Just a
Be or not
story,
to
but
be.
it has to have a setting.
Yeah, I know, but
It has a
Henry
real
lost his
setting.
hearing,
That's
was
all.
to pay
That's
or
where
not
his
to pay.
castle was in the story.
Well, the island's really
Oh,
famous for
I see.
Tycho Brahe, right? The astronomer that the king of
The crazy
Denmark,
astronomer.
the king of Denmark said, "Hey, you go map the heavens, and I'm going to give you the island." And because it was in the middle of the ocean there in the Strait of Øresund, very, very dark. And the map of the heavens that Tycho Brahe created is still in use today. It is the mapping of the constellations, and they've turned a church on the island into the museum for Tycho. And that is hence why Henrik named his peated whiskey 50-50 peat, 50% Swedish peat, 50% Scottish peat from Islay. It's a very soft, there's Henrik, he's back. He's better about talking about his own whiskey than me.
About Tycho Brahe, yes. He was a famous astronomer, as Henry said, way back in the 15th century, and was one of the most famous scientists of his time. And he actually made spirits on the island as well.
Ah.
So
Hey,
we tried to pick some of those recipes up. And that's actually the reason we call the whiskey Tycho Star. Because he was the first one that actually talked about the supernova and put it in writing. So the expression supernova nova comes actually from Tycho Brahe on the island.
But you call him Tico, not Tycho?
It's just pronunciation.
I was just thinking if it was Tycho,
he
you
was
got
actually-
that song. Tycho. Hey, we lost him.
We
We
lost.
lost Henrik.
He was
Henrik,
tired of your bullshit, Marty. That's the problem.
won't be the first time.
I guess there's a question for you, Henry, while where Henrik is sorting out the Wi-Fi situation, and we can return back to the conversation on the whiskeys. But how does the whole process of importing, establishing those relationships, deciding what to import, what does that look like?
Yeah.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
And it's become exceedingly complicated because we're little guys, and the largest players, be that the Diageos, players of really large substance that can commit to ocean freight bookings, years out, really. They know they plan on growing 10%. They have 100,000 containers booked for the US. They book 110 for 2022. They have a much better chance. We book as needed, and we get bumped these days. But the process starts kind of like what I said earlier. We meet somebody, or somebody meets us that wants to form a relationship. They want to be here. They want to be in the U.S. They want to be part of really what is the most interesting and vibrant liquor market in the world. Because we have 50 states, we really have 50 countries. And that's how you have to look at it. And that's how I explain it. I go, just because you appoint us as your national importer, I go, give us a little room. Getting into 50 countries takes time. And so the process starts with meeting a supplier. We then work out terms and agreements. And from there, when that's settled, then we have to go on to, in some instances, especially with Henrik, some products, no problem. Mercurius, Tycho Star, single malts, corn whiskeys, those are just label approvals for the most part. They're recognized by the TTB as categories that follow a certain formula. So not an issue. Then you get into vodkas or gin or aquavit, where they want to know what was the process. So we go through formula and label approvals. From there, we place orders and then try to get the product over here. And after we do get it here, as it's coming, once I know that a new brand is shipping, I do my own social media, email, I do my outreach. We do Indie Spirits, Marty and Dave Schmear's event. We were doing for a lot of years. I started early on with Ann Tunerman at Tales of the Cocktail, and so to get the products in front of people. And it's interesting. It almost never fails that at one of those type of events, somebody comes along and says, "Oh, I like that product. I had no idea. I didn't know it existed." And so then it's what I should say. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, and it's a very time consuming and expensive process for everybody involved. We don't have the luxury of global brands that are distributed through the Southern Glazers, through the Breakthrough, through
or
these
the regional offices that the big boys have.
Yeah, right. I mean, when Campari or Diageo or Pernod, when they do decide to launch something, they tell every distributor, this is how much is going into each one of your markets. And that's part of an upfront agreement with those distributors. And it becomes the priority for those distributors. And hence, I think it's why a handful of aggressive small importers like us are being thought out by so many people, because we do the hard work that nobody at a big distributor, they can't even do it. Even if they wanted to, they can't do it.
Yeah.
You have 10 to 20,000 products in your portfolio. If the company that's supplying that portfolio isn't doing all the outside marketing and footwork, which of course no small brand can do. So we weave in and through that. And that process for us is through mid-tier distributors. And I've always felt that big guys create vacuums and little guys come and fill those vacuums. And actually, Lou, when, John Hansel started his Whiskey Fest, I started with John when he was a 2-color publication, the color of the paper and the color of the ink. And it was with Springbank single malt, and then the Cottonhead merchant bottlings, and then Glen Scotia and Inchmurrin. And it was just, at one point, it got to, when John still owned it, we had 5 tables at Whiskey Fest, and it was another way that we got out, especially the New York Whiskey Fest. Chicago and New York, those were really the ones.
Yeah, New York Whiskey Fest was almost a trade show. A lot of people came to that looking for brands.
Everybody came looking for brands. That's saturated now, and we've moved to American whiskeys. And again, with American whiskeys, when Henry came out with Mercurius, which we definitely ought to taste and sample.
Yeah.
That's what I'm drinking now, I think. Yeah, it is. That's what I got now.
That's pretty wild stuff.
I can only say
these are out of the ordinary.
I can only say, and this will be a good chance for Henric to explain that question I think you had, Liz, why he makes this on a Kofi still. But I have to say that my friends that I've had over the house that taste this whiskey, that are big American bourbon drinkers, have sucked my bottles down so fast that I am now on my 4th bottle taking it home, which I have to say, outside of when I make margaritas with our Cuatro Copas tequila, this has become the largest consumed spirit out of our vast selection of spirits. And I can always turn that by what I present, if I make a caipirinha or whatever it may be. But because American whiskey is really now, it's in the spotlight. It's where it hasn't been since before World War II. And this whiskey brings a unique flavor, but at the same time, a recognizable flavor. And I've got to let Henric answer Liz's question. Why the Kofi still for Mercurius?
Yeah, Eric Owens, hey, he submitted the question, and I think that'll be, a good discussion, and we'll follow up with some of the sensory comments from the group. So, Henric, is your audio okay? Can you hear us?
Nope, we don't hear you.
Or you're really talking really, really softly. Oops, and he disappeared.
He decided to.
That's very softly.
Yes.
But notice
He walked softly too, and a big stick.
as you taste this whiskey, you know, the subtle nuances of the wood are just so beautifully woven in there.
Now, you know, the thing too, I'm not a big corn whiskey guy, typically.
This isn't corn whiskey. I can't call it bourbon.
Oh, is that the whole thing?
Right.
This is 70% corn. Is that correct, Henric?
Just nod.
Yeah, it's
like Marceau.
It's a bourbon. Yeah. It's a bourbon mash bill, heavy on the corn.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that circus peanut smell.
Yeah.
It's huge.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Now I don't hear you.
Amazing. I would agree, Lou. So your comment about the circus peanut. So I'm getting a lot of banana and melon esters. And I would guess that the coffee still, from my experience working with grain whiskey and coffee still, is that because there's so much more rectification due to the plumbing of the coffee still, that you do get a lot of those, richer ester profile. And I'm hoping Henric can hear us.
Henric, now you're muted. You just muted a man who we couldn't hear in the first place. Henric, unmute yourself. Oh, now we can't hear it.
I mean, what I find that's different than American whiskey, it isn't quite as sweet. It's drier. Almost like as if it had more rye in it than it does.
Well, what I like about it is the body.
You hear me now? No.
It has a really beautiful body.
Me? But now
Henric, can you can't. Well, you took your little ear things out.
Can you put one ear thing in?
Ear thing.
Technology sometimes comes to bite you in the butt.
Yeah. That's why I still use
daily
semaphores.
Yeah.
You hear me?
Can you hear us?
Oh, I hear you as well. Oh,
there you go.
Yes.
Amazing.
Amazing. Finally. Yeah, so,
I knew we'd get there. I knew it.
Yeah. The Mercurius is 88% corn.
88% corn.
Yeah. And 5% wheat, 3.5% barley, and 3.5% rye.
Oh, wow.
So we mix in some just to get more character in there. In the beginning, I actually wanted diastatic power and all the enzymatic power from the barley, but the character actually went so wrong. So we decided to cut back anyway. So now we actually do add enzymes. But to the question from Ulyss and from Eric, the reason we do what we do is I want to extract as much as possible from the grain. So we ferment all grains on the grains. We bring that over to our 3,000. We do 3,000 liter batches, and we do that in our big pot still, and get a low wine out, and that we put into our coffee still. I don't want to put the grains in the coffee still. That's one point of it. But it also means that we actually don't take away any heads or tails. Everything is in there. And with the coffee still, we just separate the top notes that we don't want. That's recirculated back to the charge tank. And obviously we take the low stuff off. So we get all that character built in there. So that's the reason I want to use the continuous still to get more character in there.
I don't know if you heard us, but yeah, both Lou and I mentioned circus peanut, banana, melon notes, so a lot of esters. So just, probably from that additional rectification that a coffee still gets, that you really get some nice, compounds in there, some nice ester compounds.
And it's actually quite, because it's already in the low wines when we analyze that. And most of it actually comes from the corn, from the grain, original grain. And I don't know if some of you probably seen those analytics that we and some other laboratories as well have done on different grains grown on different places, same grain grown on different locations. And with same location but different grains. And what we actually see with a lot of different grains, and corn especially so, is that it's more important where it actually grows than the actual variety. So what we get out, all that pineapple, apple, barbecue sauce, all that stuff, it's like a Georgia white sauce, isn't it? All in there, packed with mangoes and esters and aldehydes and fruit punch. And that's the way I like it.
Do you use, oh, sorry, do you use specific yeast strains as well? Do you have a house strain, or are you kind of mixing and matching for whiskey or skew?
I don't know if I understand the question. The mash bill is complete as is. Was that the question or no?
Yeast, I was just talking about yeast strain.
The yeast
Is that
strain.
something that you're playing around with as well?
Yes, not for this particular though. For Mercurius, it's just a cerevisia. So it's a grain where we or a strain where we give in a little bit more estery notes, and we do push temperature. So we have 2 different temperature schemes during a 7-day fermentation. So we create a bit more, and the last part is actually under pressure as well. So we do create quite a lot of character there, but it's only one strain. But with the Tico Star, for example, we actually use 3 different yeast strains, which is stupid in any aspect, but we do. So we do add a Bionis yeast in the end just to create more flavor.
Okay, interesting. So that's more, akin for those, more of a wine yeast strain than a Bionis. Interesting.
You know, one thing we didn't do here is Henric should have a little bit of chance to give us his background, because he's very unique. He's very unique as a distiller. You got to give us he's a chemist and he's an engineer.
What?
He's not just a distiller. He's a restaurateur and an innkeeper. I mean,
Henry, that was going to be my next question. So you just
I'm in
Marty,
third liver.
I gotta say, you're just a little slow on the draw.
I got a quick card on the cirrhosis clinic.
Shots fired.
Oh my God. All right.
A lot of hats.
Well, thanks guys for being on the show this week.
I guess we're done.
Henric, actually, my question was going to be with nosing and tasting. Do you have a team? Is this something you do by yourself, or do you have a trusted pack?
A trusted pack. You need to have, because not all days are the same, right? So you need to have your panels anyway. And shockingly enough, not all recipes are my own favorites. It's, again, if you have a favorite, it should be your own, or at least if it's kids. So sometimes if you do create a recipe for a certain clientele, you need to have that clientele in your panel, right? So it's depending on what kind of product you do. When doing these, the special varieties of rye and the Venus, or the rye and the Mercurius, the corn whiskies, I did something I liked, because I knew I had to drink it if nobody bought it. So I did something I liked myself. But I also, so I did something there. So you start out doing your own mix where you're more or less agreed on, and then we have all our ICP-MS, GC-MS, HPLCs, atomic source, and all that, the technical stuff to make sure we don't get cancer on the first try, or at least. Yeah.
That's good.
So we do all the technical stuff, and then when we have something we're pretty happy about, we go around and create our panels.
And Henric, your island is situated right between Sweden and Norway? Denmark, yeah, up there.
Yeah. No, we tend to say, the English people, they tend to talk about overseas territories, the former colonies. We talk about over mountain territory. That's our Norway. Because,
nice.
you know about Brexit and all that stuff. Norway used to belong to Sweden, but we gave it away.
Back in the days of Greater Sweden.
Then they found oil.
Then they get all uppity.
Yeah, but they still drink anything though.
No.
Yeah. And they were the original hipsters, right? With face tattoos and building ships and,
Oh, that's
and
right. Yeah.
fleeing their wives and all that. So.
There were your punk, your steampunkers.
That was
right
the first
there.
one, the originators.
That's right. So now your complex is more than just a distillery. I mean, you have a hotel, you have a restaurant. Do you have a spa, a steam bath for your steampunkers?
Of course.
You guys jump into do you go steaming and then jump in the cold water in the winter?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Polar bear stuff?
in Sweden, everybody's nude. Either they're dressed up or they're nude.
Ew.
I like the juxtaposition. That's
Yeah, and now I'm thinking of Henry visiting there and jumping around, coming out nude.
and that's why
Careful what you ask for, buddy.
I know.
That's why
Well, now I'm thinking of Lou jumping in there, coming out nude.
Try not to think about it. Try not to think
It's
about it.
burned. It's burned into my memory.
That's why we drink a lot.
Can we go back to the whiskey a second? I wanted to ask about the Tico Star, the malt, particularly about the Swedish peat, or is it Swedish peat or is it Swedish smoked with other peat? I'm not clear on that.
It's not the black peat, you know, the Santa's helper, right?
Right.
That was from the Dutch, wasn't it, Henry? Schwarze Piet. That's actually Santa's helper from the beginning. It wasn't racial. It was they were getting black climbing the chimneys. So.
Yes.
But the Tico Star, yes, we do bring some peat in from Iowa, actually from one of the big sister companies there. And then we have some peat from Sweden, but that Swedish peat is very, very light. So what we also do is we bring some seaweed from the beaches here, where we actually bring in. So we get the sulfur compounds and some of the nitrogen there. So that's what we smoke with, or about 5%.
The aroma and flavor, I mean, they're markedly different.
Yeah.
Well, Henrik, if say peat in the Highlands of Scotland are from compressed, what do you call that flower of Scotland? Heather. Then what is it in Sweden? Is it just compressed old grass and hay? And I mean, what would what would make up?
We did have ice a bit longer than the Scottish people. Might be due to the awful effect of the liquor. I don't know. But looking at if you go inland Scotland, it's more heather, as you see. It's more flowery notes. If you go out on the islands like Islay or Orkney or whatever, you get more of the floaters and the dead dinosaurs and whatever oil worker shipped off and whatever. So you get more of
a little dead dinosaur.
Yes, is it? That's a Stegosaurus, by the way. But the stuff we had here was more Tyrannosaurus Rex, kind of like flowery with an edge, right? So you get the checkered sofa. So
short arms.
It's such a perfectly balanced peated whiskey.
It's more of a peppery note, some minty notes that we get from the peat here. So, but again, a lot what goes into Tico Star as well. With the rye and the corn whiskies, it's mainly American New charred oak. With Tico Star, it's a mix of 3 different varieties of oak, where one of those are Chinkapin oak from Missouri. Then we have Quercus robur from Burgundy, and we have Quercus petraea from Allier. And those all contribute totally different aspects to the whiskey.
This has a kind of a cigar-y tobacco note to it. I mean, it's...
And I'm getting the sulfur grapefruit as well.
Yeah.
Sulfur grapefruit?
It's like a Cohiba on steroids.
Okay.
Say it. What was that?
A Cohiba on steroids?
Oh, yeah.
A big, muscular cigar, I guess. Now, here's a question. I think we asked this of our guest, Oscar Bruno, who was on about a month ago or so. Is there a Swedish whiskey? I mean, could you claim, I mean, there's something about making whiskey up in the Nordic countries, up in Sweden or Norway, that makes it really, really different from, say, whiskeys in Scotland, where, you're kind of in that same,
Now, you're talking specifically about the aging conditions?
Aging? I don't know. I would think about the environment.
It's mainly with fillers. I don't know.
So you're 75, right? So you're looking pretty good.
Yeah, on the inside, you should see my liver.
Which is on display in the.
Yeah, I would burn for days if it. Not. Don't cremate me, by the way. If you record it. No, I don't think there's a Swedish style. We do quite differently. We have on the West Coast, we have some distillery doing really peaty stuff. This is more of a medium peated style with a broad array of phenols. Whilst we have the likes of Bruno, where they actually do two varieties, but again, something different with their vacuum style whiskies. We have Macmyra and High Coast whiskies, with again doing more traditional Scottish style, but with a tweak. So I don't think it's a Swedish style, but what we have in common here is we as most distillers, we have a good community, we work well together, but also we have a lust for trying new stuff and experiment, and we're not locked in by convention or what we need to do or all these statutes or legislation. We can do more or less what we want, as long as we adhere to, don't store it on wooden containers larger than 700 liters and store it for 3 years. We can do more or less whatever we want.
Yeah, that's fun. I mean, that's great, and that's why I actually like about that's why I would like that the American distilling industry doesn't over-regulate itself too much and paint itself in a corner, because I like all the innovation that. I don't see why you need to categorize. You can make a style without having to,
And
we were talking about Empire Rye a couple of weeks ago. I almost wonder if Empire Rye is just setting up distillers to say, well, I make a different rye. And then you're off to the races again. I don't why try and ring fence everything?
Exactly. I mean, I think. Go ahead.
We've all been or worked or with the big, huge companies, and even if we try to do the exact same whiskey in two different mom and pop distillers, they will have a different profile. So we will always create something different. Every whiskey will be different or unique or whatever. But you should push your own uniqueness, especially if you're small, and create your own profile.
Yeah,
and
that's what I think.
Henry, a question, just kind of closing the loop on that. Since, I mean, there's no real consumer perception. If you say, here's an Islay Scotch, okay, people kind of know. But since there isn't a consumer perception with Swedish whiskey as a style, because, as we were just discussing, there's not really a defined style, which is awesome. But how does that translate?
It's a good question, Liz, because that's what our biggest challenge is. I've often been ahead of the curve. I brought in Armorique from France 20 years ago. I couldn't give it away for free. In fact, after I had sold the old company, they closed it out, and today Rhoades imports it and there's getting to be, because of Allison Park and a lot of, energy she's put into her Brenny whiskey and so on, there is a slow moving recognition they make whiskey in France. There are fewer producers up in the Nordic countries than there are in France or some other places. So it presents a challenge. One of the things I get with Tycho Star is people taste it, they love it. then they have a hard time wrapping their head around the value of it. Well, it's not an inexpensive whiskey for Henry to make, and it comes from a very difficult place to bring here. If that same whiskey came from Islay, nobody would say a darn thing about the quality, about the price, or anything. But we find that to be a challenge. And so it goes back to the long game. The whiskey is phenomenal. I think we all just tasted it. The nuances, the balance, everything. The whiskey is beautiful. It's as simple as that. I think it holds up quality-wise to anybody's whiskey made anywhere. Doesn't matter if it's Australia or Scotland or Ireland, whatever it may be. So it's really, it comes back to what we do as a company, which is we find great products from producers that put everything into it. And we just have to have the patience to give us the chance to get it out. I mean, one of the best tools we have is the bottles you guys got, those 100 ml that are identical to the large bottle. It has to be the most expensive sample that any supplier we work with gives us, because it doesn't cost Henric any less to make that little bottle than the big bottle, but it gives us the opportunity to send some of our reps and distributors interested a beautiful package as a sample. And so it's getting that space carved out in stores, getting more retailers aware of broadening their whiskey section beyond the traditional either American or Scottish entries. And it's slowly happening. Not as much as I would like. And a big part of that is just education.
Yeah.
So, whoever's on here, whoever shares what we shared on here, moves it forward. Marty's always a great ambassador, as is Lou and you. And that's how these brands grow, little tiny ambassadors that say, you got to try that. It's really great. The other thing I think is really great is that Henric and Anya, his partner, they bend over backwards to work with me on the pricing that we'd like to have for the shelf, because the US is complicated. In Europe, you can go from distillery right to a store. We can't do that here. We have a 3-tier system. Everybody in that system makes money. It's a good system because it actually, in a very large country with a substantial population, gets the product into a lot of places. On occasion, it holds you back, but in the overall scheme of things, it grows brands. And so it's very valuable. But they work super hard to make their pricing fit so that we have a shelf price. Actually, I have 3 packs. I think we got the whiskey one, and is it the gin one, Henric, that has an aquavit in it?
Yeah, we have 4 different 3 packs now. I don't know if all is being delivered yet, but otherwise it's on the way over. But
I have to look. I can send you a list, Marty. The aquavit, by the way, is an awesome marriage between Henric's whiskey style and what most Americans, what they do know about aquavit, because Henric's aquavits they're much more abundant in flavor, a lot less generic, and very complex. They're just one of my. I have to say that about a number of spirits, because he also makes a summer spirit. We're going to rename it because we don't want people to look at it only in the summer. But it's like getting an elderflower liqueur that's complex and no sugar. Phenomenal. Then we have the winter spirit, which, as you would expect, is just rich with those notes for cold weather drinking. All of them weave in something I think a whiskey enthusiast would enjoy. They all have that complexity and many layers of flavor. It's a great program. It's an exciting program to sell.
I got to say, the idea of slipping an aquavit in on a gin drinker is genius. I love that idea.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, right? It's sort of. I mean, it isn't unlike Geneva. I mean, it doesn't taste like Geneva, but it is kind of a cross between whiskey and gin.
Yeah.
And
I keep trying to tell small distillers in America that aquavit would be a great thing to experiment with, mainly because most people have no idea what the hell it is.
Yeah, and it's such a classic
So
spirit.
Not a
It's
lot
been
of
around
preconceived
forever.
notions.
Yeah. Oh, it's old. It's old. And what I find with domestic distillers of aquavit, and I'm not going to throw any names out there, but I find with domestic distillers of aquavit, they don't taste anything like Scandinavian aquavits. They just
It's like
don't.
apple pie. If you don't go over to Holland,
Yeah.
you haven't really had apple pie.
And so it's
Pizza, Italy.
Yeah, I think to your point, the comment about sugar, though, I think is important to call out because, right, I feel like everything is overly sweet here in our country.
Well, you know what, Liz? Honestly, bartenders over the last 10 years have really put the pressure on the industry to bring the sugar down in the liqueurs.
Good.
Right. So outside of French cremes, which are mandated to have a certain level of sugar, but French cremes are built around berries. Berries require sugar. Well, that's a perfect liqueur, Benedictine.
So
I love it. I wish it was
Actually
mine.
honey. They say it's honey, not sugar. So,
but there's really been a lot of pressure on liqueur producers. So like we just created a line of liqueurs we're going to own that we've been working on for almost 2 years. And in the formulas, we really look at, we've asked bartenders, how's that going to work? Will that work? They want to add their own sweetness, which brings me, back to the summer spirit from Henric, because you can get all that punch of elderflower with no sweetness. If you want to put it into a cocktail, you can control what you want it to taste like. Yeah. And, I think and a lot of the classic cocktails which have made a comeback are really not that sweet. Right? If you go back to the Jerry Thomas book, they weren't that sweet. Sugar has become something that was an expensive luxury and has become overused to get people addicted to particular food categories and things. I mean, an interesting comment was a few years ago, we were doing a trade event for Savannah Distributing, and I had George Rowley over here, the founder of Lefay Absinthe. And, so we had to rush around. We had to find some sugar cubes so we could do the traditional absinthe. And he says, Henry, this really isn't traditional. He said, if you think back when absinthe was big, sugar was a luxury. It was hard sugar. He said it wasn't this highly refined sugar that when you're dripping absinthe on it, no matter how small you drip it, in a few seconds, the cube of sugar is in your drink. He said back when absinthe, at the turn of the prior century, when it was a big item and they used hard sugar, they had to really control the drip really, really slow so that you could bring some of the sugar into the absinthe. So at the end, almost no sugar was in that.
Yeah, like little stones.
It's impossible to create. Well, you could. You buy rock sugar.
So real quick, because we're going to be running a little short on time. But Christina Wolf over in Germany, our gal Christina, the Wolf. I like to just call her the Wolf. She has a question that was very similar to what I believe I asked, but I think she says it better. Henric, how would you describe it? Is there a specific Swedish flavor profile for Swedish whiskey so that there can be immediately classified in terms of taste? I know from our distilleries that they struggle with this issue.
Yeah.
So, does that sound a little different from what I asked you?
No, it's in parallel to what we talked about earlier, and I don't think. Yeah, I'm a politician as well. So as a politician, I've been married for 20 odd years. So,
no, I think as a politician, we work with the legislation. How are we supposed to have certain aspects, and how are we going to manufacture a gin or a whiskey or whatever? And that gives us a direction to taste and smell, or scent, better word. I don't see a Swedish direction straight out, but I do see a lot of flavor. There's very few of the Swedish distillers that do the base spirit like the grain whiskies or the simple stuff that goes into volume, because all of it needs to be very, very special. And that's the same for Germany, for most part of Europe, I would say. But here it's with the tradition of akvavit, you tend to have a sweeter profile. And with sweeter, again, no sugar, but you add wood that gives you more residual sugars, wood sugars. You might have sweet wine casks, for example. Going into akvavit, you tend not to add sugar, but you do add fennel or aniseed or something that licorice, for example, being 50 times sweeter than sugar, or not sweeter, but it's actually bitter blocking. The reason to add sugar is bitter blocking, right? It's not the sweetness in itself.
Yeah. And then for Henry, 2 questions. One, are you going over to Henric's distillery anytime soon, and do you need someone to carry your luggage? And then 2, are you going to do are you ever thinking about doing a show of just your portfolio of spirits and taking it on the road?
Yeah,
I need somebody to go out looking for the children in the corn market. So he can come any day.
Just give me a bat, a wiffle bat. I'll go through there and get over there. Damn kids.
You got an Indiana whip, like.
Yeah.
Actually, what you said, Marty, in the prior company, the one that's hodling now, we actually took all our whiskey suppliers and we did a road show. It's a lot of work to organize, but we went to multiple cities, and it was just the Preiss Imports whiskeys and we had a very substantial portfolio. But we're getting there again. I've got, we have an Irish whiskey. We've got a couple of new Irish whiskeys coming. I've got Henric's whiskeys. I'm working on a French whiskey. And actually, to Christina's question, and this question comes up often, like you said, Marty, people struggle with it. Is there a particular style that's American, that's Swedish, that's French? No, there's no particular style. What you get is a unique style of each producer. And that, to me, is what made my Scotch portfolio interesting, because we had so many different producers. None of their whiskeys tasted the same. None of Henry's whiskeys taste the same. None of the other Swedish whiskeys I've tasted taste like Henric's. And, so that, I think, is what makes whiskey so amazingly interesting. Very similar ingredients. Sorry, my phone is vibrating. Very similar ingredients used in different places of the world. And yet the whiskeys taste totally different. There's the wood, there's the atmosphere. Is it humid? Is it dry? Is it hot? Is it cold? It's just, it's that variety that just is what makes this business that's just so amazing, so incredibly amazing and interesting.
It strikes me that a tour like that would be a good one to have an author along that explains that kind of thing.
See if Charlie McLean's available.
Just a
consultant, a consultant,
Fred American's available, I think.
A wiffle ball whacker, a journalist. No, the good thing is Henric does have the accommodations.
You're all welcome.
Hotel, 5-star restaurant, boom.
And as Eric mentioned, your son Charlie will be serving us cocktails. So
he's amazing with that.
See, that's like, hey, is he single, and is Nikki still single?
No, Nikki's getting married in September, but early on when we started with Henric and Anya, and Charlie, when he was coming over on one of our meetings, he said, "Is Nikki going to be there?"
See,
she's not married yet.
No, that's true.
You ever see The Graduate? It's right up to the last minute.
So you're saying there's still a hope?
I think that was the reason he went to summer school in San Diego. I don't know.
Just not
Okay,
enough
all right,
intermarrying between liquor people. Should be more of it.
Yeah, I agree.
A sip of knowledge. We give you marketing and apparently now matchmaking services.
Matchmaking advice, right?
That's right. Don't forget
That's how we build the genome of whiskey, right?
for the
It's all in the DNA.
for the
Yeah.
distillery. I mean, even though it's Hven, it looks like heaven. And so
It's
it's
the
like
Prince of Heaven.
Gopher's song, Heaven, soul of my heart. And then for Tycho, I'm pronouncing it Tycho. The old song, Tycho, Tycho, aye. Tycho, Tycho, aye. Ah, come on, it's peppy. It's not very
So who's on
Swedish.
next week?
I don't know if it's true, but that line, "Chakamuffin ane," doesn't that just mean go hump yourself?
Go home to your.
So
That's what I heard, but I don't know.
I wanted to say the nerd in me appreciates your Erlenmeyer flask pack.
Oh,
Very much so.
yeah.
And thank you very much,
Nerd.
Henry and Henrik, for being in the show this week. It's
And
been
thanks for the sample. These whiskeys
Yeah.
were
Yeah, I give
phenomenal.
these a very rare rating, a Duffy rating of 10 hiccups. Right here. That's a 10 hiccups right there.
awesome. So before we go, I just wanted to mention our guests, also plural. Next week, we have 2 guests on as well. We have Dan and Charlie Garrison, the Garrison Brothers Distillery in
Hi.
yes,
Texas way.
Texas. So come back, join us next week. It'll be, I can't promise it'll be as entertaining as today, but come back.
Well, they have an amazing still as well.
You've been down there?
Look, I mean, we got to be fair. It's not easy to beat Henry and Henrik. That's
I think that was my favorite British show of the 60s when I was a kid.
But how you see we're brothers, right?
that's right.
Yep. Different parents, but still brothers.
Henrik,
Henrik, thank you for the walk around. That was
Yeah,
that was the best. I love that.
I'm actually going to make a point of trying to get out to that little island somehow. I'm not swimming, but I will.
Anything.
Go
We're
ahead.
waiting for a couple of pallets of glasses, so you can bring them on as well.
I'll be in the center of them. Making some money on transport.
I think you should personally deliver them. I would go back to Paul and say, hey, look,
Yeah.
somebody needs to do this on a personal
Get me a
basis.
wheelbarrow.
Yeah. If I went to Paul and said, hey, send me to Sweden, he's like, what? Yeah, fucking crazy. Get here. You're fired.
Yeah, you have
and on that
a
note-
Welsh accent, is that correct?
Huh? That's,
Is that
just
a Welsh
Paul,
accent?
that's not even an accent. That's just how Paul talks.
That's right.
That's not even a Scottish accent. Yeah, thanks, everyone. And everyone be good, I guess.
yeah.
Thank you very much. Great. It was a
Thank
lot
you.
of fun.
We'll
guys.
see both of you guys. We'll see you at
Thank
ADI.
Idiot. Woo. Bye.
Idiot.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.